I'll say this, Rand. If nothing else, we have a good time on this show. So I'm happy to be with you in this new year, 2026. But here's the question. Are the Bucs one offseason away? Or are they one era past? Welcome back to With the First Pick. On this edition of The Perfect Picks, we got to fix the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's Rand Carthon, of course. All right. Let us know, Buccaneers fans. Todd Bowles is back, but here's the thing. As we're recording this earlier today, the OC, Josh Grizzard, has been relieved of his duties, as has Thad Lewis, who was also on that offensive staff. Grizzard was the pass game coordinator a year ago under Liam Cohen, so he was promoted with the thinking presumably being ran that we'll keep this thing going continuity-wise. We saw the same thing happen in Detroit. They brought John Morton back after Ben Johnson left. Halfway through the season, Dan Campbell's calling plays. So Todd Bowles is coming back. He's 35-33 in his time there. They've won the division 4 of the last 5 years. Didn't win it this year, of course. What are we doing offensively? Because the offense didn't do so great the second half of the season.
Yeah, man, this is obviously, like you said, today the news broke that Josh Grizzard was let go. Thad Lewis's contract was not renewed. But then an important and silent partner in all of the success that they've been able to have on offense is Tom Moore. Tom Moore, if you know, Tom Moore was like their senior offensive consultant. Tom Moore is now retiring. If you know anything about Tom Moore was the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions back in the day. He was Peyton Manning's offensive coordinator in Indianapolis throughout all those years. Tom Moore, to my knowledge, and fans, please drop in the comments and let me know if I'm right or wrong. But to my knowledge, Tom Moore is the only offensive coordinator to coordinate an offense that featured a 4,000-yard passer, a 1,500-yard rusher, and 3,000-yard receivers. And he did that in Detroit back in the day with Scott Mitchell at quarterback, and then he did it again with the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning. And so he's a bright offensive mind. And so I thought having him in the fold with whether it was Dave Canales, whether it was Liam Cohen, Josh Grizzard, like he was a good sounding board for those guys to be able to come up with some of these schemes and concepts. But for them, the big question now is who's going to be your next offensive coordinator? And if you are an offensive coordinator candidate, how attractive is this job to you? And not necessarily in terms of the talent on the team, because there is offensive talent. They have a solid offensive line, but just in terms of what we would view as the job security of Todd Bowles, right? Because
and Baker's in the last year of his deal.
Yeah, so those are all questions that if you're an offensive coordinator candidate that you have to, not only are you going to interview and tell them why you should be the offensive coordinator, but you should flip it and let them know that, like, what's the long-term security for yourself. Now, we see here Todd Bowles' record in what he's been able to do as the head coach there. But, you know, he has been able to win a division no matter what you think about the division or whether you think the division stinks. But he's been able to win the division, and that was the one opportunity that you need, is to win the division, have an opportunity to get in the tournament. And the one thing, too, from a financial standpoint, what winning the division allows you to do is to host a playoff game, which allows your organization to make money, because you don't necessarily make money in the playoffs playing on the road, just in terms of player salary that you have to pay, coach's salary, bonuses, and then you have to charter these planes, these hotels, and everything for taking that show on the road. So you don't really make money in the playoffs if you're on the road. Now, one thing that, like I said, he's been able to do is he's been able to win his division and host a playoff game, which allows the Bucs organization to make money. So, you know, with that said, the offensive coordinator spot is one that's going to be key for them, is locking down a good offensive coordinator.
And you make a good point, because we forget, at least fans do, maybe until this time of year, that this is an incredibly stressful job, even when you put the football part aside, because it is year to year, sometimes month to month, and week to week. So it is important and imperative upon you, if you don't know what the situation is going to be at quarterback with Baker in the final year, or Todd Bowles, who maybe is going into the lame duck year, Those are the questions you have to ask. But as the old saying goes, there's also only 32 of these jobs, so you have to do that math. All right, Rand, let's turn to the salary cap situation. And as always, you can be my fact checker here. I have the Bucks currently number 18 in available salary cap space, around $34.5 million available this spring. And they continue to have needs on both sides of the ball. I'll read you some names of free agents on the team about to hit that free agent period in a few weeks here, and you let me know who we're bringing back and what we're trying to do with the available salary cap space. Hall of Famer Mike Evans, Hall of Famer Levante David, their contracts are up. Jamel Dean, the cornerback, Rashad White, the running back, as well as Sean Tucker, the running back, shout out Syracuse. Teddy Bridgewater, the backup, who is a great guy to have on the team in case of emergency. He did have to play a handful of snaps here when Baker was banged up. And then Cade Otton, their tight end, who flashed when he was utilized. So of those names, anybody that's a must-have, or is this a situation where, especially with Mike Evans and Levante David, we're giving them the gold watch and trying to get younger at those positions?
Well, I think if you saw the post-game reaction in the locker room of Levante David, I think this is it for Levante David. I think he's hanging the cleats up on a potential Hall of Fame career, no matter what you think. One of the things we talk about in terms of linebackers making the Hall of Fame, you look at the accolades, and the average linebacker Hall of Famers had at least 3 to 4 first-team All-Pros. I think Levante Davis only had 1. But if you look at all his career numbers, only people that are above him that have better numbers are 2 to 3 Hall of Famers. So I think he's had a quiet Hall of Fame-esque career. So shout out to Levante for that. The tricky one for me is Mike Evans, is how much does he have left in the tank? But when he's your all-time great wide receiver, I think you try to figure out something to bring him back if you can, but you don't want to overextend yourself just because of what he means, not only to the organization, but the community as well. The other guy that we didn't mention, because you don't consider these people humans, punter Riley Dixon. I think you look to
shout out Syracuse.
I think you look to bring the punter back, and Cade Otton as well. I mean, he finished the season strong, had 7 or 8 catches in that final game of the season, gave them opportunity to win the game. I think Rashad White, I like the role he plays, but I just think, the more you have him on the field, the more you take Bucky Irvin off and
right.
his touch and you don't allow him to touch the ball as much. For me, moving on to the other side, a cap casualty / renegotiation candidate for me, a huge one, is Chris Godwin. His cap number this year is $33.7 million, and it carries a dead cap number of $49.9 million, almost $50 million. So to me, you got to look to renegotiate that. That'll free up some money for you, because right now, the Tampa Bay Bucks, by my last look at it, they have $253,000 in dead cap money. So they could take on a little bit more dead cap money in terms of getting out of some of these big contracts that they have. They're sitting on 7 draft picks. They got 1 pick in each round. They've had success drafting over these last couple years. Obviously, they hit on a guy like Emeka Egbuka. You like the upside of Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, but they've done a good job of hitting those day 3 guys as well. They took Tez Johnson last year in the 7th round. You took Bucky Irvin in the 4th or 5th round a couple years ago. So they've had success hitting on those, so they got to continue to do that. But to me, if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and this organization, you have to figure out what this new iteration of this offense is going to look like. And then from there, you got to figure out where you're going to go as an entire organization. And that's, in the front office, on the field, with the coaching staff, and where you see this thing going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned Bucky Irvin, and you also mentioned Tom Moore. They had a very unique special relationship as well. So that's something to monitor now that Tom Moore has retired, and what that means for Bucky Irvin, whether they bring back these running backs, Rashad White or Sean Tucker or not. Just something to monitor. You mentioned the 7 draft picks that the Bucs have. They're currently picking number 15 overall. Let's play the old game here. I'm going to give you some names of potential impact players, and you tell me which one would provide the biggest impact immediately in 2026. Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles. Middle of the first round possibility. Jordan Tyson, your wide receiver out of Arizona State. What would he do for that team? Jermon McCoy, the cornerback out of Tennessee, who missed last year with the ACL injury. And then the young man built in the lab, tight end Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon, especially if they move from Cade Otton. Which of those guys do you want first in line to get this thing right in 26?
I would say if you're if you're the Tampa Bay Bucks, I don't. In just my opinion, I don't think you can go back-to-back receiver in the first round. Especially within the top 20. Just that's just me because again, we win a Mecca and we saw where he was the head and heels favorite to be the offensive rookie of the year. And then once they got everybody back, you saw his role shrink and diminish significantly to where his numbers kind of fell off. But if there's a world where you bring Mike Evans back and you bring Chris Godwin back and you still have a Mecca, there's no room for a top 15 pick to be a wide receiver
right.
and in that wide receiver room, right? So to me, that kind of defeats the purpose. I think Kenyon Sadiq is extremely talented, and he was my favorite tight end coming into the year because I thought he would have a big year in terms of being a key mismatch. But I don't think the production has matched the talent level in that Oregon offense, and so to me that doesn't warrant a top 15 pick again. And I can't even remember at this point who I picked for the Bucks in our mock draft the other day. But to me, if you said the name Sonny Styles, and Sonny Styles is a converted safety, and oddly enough, people felt when Levante David was coming out of high school and coming out of JUCO that he should have been a safety because he wasn't big enough. But then now you have a 6'3", 6'4" Sonny Styles who's moving from safety down to linebacker these last couple years. He's athletic. He still has some growth to be had just in terms of instincts because he's still getting used to playing in the box, reading the triangle where things are happening fast. But you talk about replacing Levante David with an athletic linebacker that can play sideline to sideline, that can run, that can cover. To me, that is a nice fit in this defense and will allow them to kind of easily transition and continuing the rich history that they've had so far. I mean, you go back to Derek Brooks, and he was a Hall of Fame linebacker. And then you have Levante David come some years later. And obviously, I feel like he's had a Hall of Fame career. Not saying Sonny Styles is going to be a Hall of Famer, but he follows in that tradition of that weak side linebacker that's athletic and that can do all things.
No, I love it. Bucs fans, let us know what you think about that. Who's your favorite draft target in the middle of the first round? And which of these free agents currently on the roster are must keeps, and who are some of the names perhaps that you're okay moving on from as we head to 2026? All right, Rand, let's get to the old Jim Moore playoffs portion of this podcast here. And here's where I'm at, and you tell me where you are. This team is perennially going to be in the mix to win this division because the division's wide open, and by that I mean maybe it ain't great. So, you can win 8 or 9 games and win the division. They almost won the division this time, even though they lost in week 18, had the Saints beating the Falcons. Knowing all that, this feels like a team that will always be in the mix to win the division. It also feels like a team where everything has to line up for them to win a playoff game. How close are they to getting over that playoff hump instead of just being hosting a home game and then going home for the rest of the summer?
Honestly, I think that window is really, really shrinking. Because again, we didn't expect for the Carolina Panthers to be in this spot. We all expected them to finish last in the division, and for everything that the Carolina Panthers are not, they are trending upwards, and they are building it the right way. Dan Morgan and Dave Canales have done a good job in terms of building this organization, and they might have peaked a year earlier than expected. But even in this current coaching cycle, I feel like with now that before Baltimore became available, I felt like the Atlanta Falcons job was the best job because you had an all-pro tackle, all-pro running back, receiver, corner. You got some young and up-and-coming pass rushers. So I think the Atlanta Falcons, once they figure out what they're going to do at quarterback, then they could be potentially the team to beat. Obviously said that Carolina's trending upward, and then the New Orleans Saints feels like they've got their quarterback of the future. So I think it's looking the other way to me for the Bucs.
All right, Bucs fans, let us know what you think about that. I know you, I would imagine, think this team can win the division every year, but how good do you feel about this as a playoff team that can reel off some wins? Because I think Rand's probably closer to the truth than perhaps the Buccaneers want to admit right now.